Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first congratulate you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of this committee, because of the short time that I've been here. This is perhaps the most important effort that I see to speak in a way that we can reach a consensus, and I think that members from both sides of the aisle have expressed their interest in having a real budget for the State Department and for our men and women of the State Department to do the work that is so important to our nation. And I think it's important also for the American people to hear the negative impacts the cutting of the State Department will have on our obligations abroad. As my colleagues and I have stated throughout this hearing and time again, Trump's budget is a threat to national security and it's a threat to the interests of the American people. This so-called skinny budget, which I call an anemic budget, prioritizes building border walls over diplomacy and housing the poor. If Trump is serious about curbing quote-unquote illegal immigration, then we need to invest in the root causes of child and family migration from Central America, particularly from the Triangle. If Trump is serious about keeping Americans safe, then we need to listen to more than 120 retired U.S. generals and admirals who have warned us that elevating and strengthening diplomacy and development alongside defense are critical to keeping Americans safe. If Trump is serious about draining the swamp, then the President needs to release his tax returns so the American people can rest assured that his proposed budget does not conflict with investment abroad. The American people deserve to know who the President's overseas partners are, who his creditors are, and where he has invested. If Trump is serious about stopping the illegal drug flow, then we need to be investing more and more, not cutting back on programs like the Caribbean Basic Security Initiative. And finally, if Trump is serious about making America great again, then I urge all of my colleagues to reject this anemic budget. This budget gambles with American lives and makes America's last. As members of this committee, we've seen that making an investment abroad is not about charity. It's about keeping violence and hatred from America's shore. I hope the committee rejects this budget and will instead prioritize our commitments abroad, including investing in, for example, emergency preparedness in the Caribbean, the U.S. strategic engagement in Central America, funding for the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, investing in energy potential in many places throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, increasing funding for the United States Agency for International Development. My questions are to you, Mr. Ambassador. I mentioned the issue of the tax returns, Mr. Trump's tax returns. And obviously, if we adopt this budget, our diplomats will not have the necessary tools to be able to do their job efficiently and be able to determine whether, in fact, they are advocating for our diplomatic goals and objectives, or in fact may be pushing or looking to advance Trump's profits abroad. Do you think it is important that the tax returns are released so that we were able to have a diplomatic corps that's more transparent in the way they do business, the way they conduct diplomacy across the globe, and ensure that there are no conflict of interest with the Trump profit-making machine?
Well, Congressman, I'm a foreign policy person. I normally don't have expressed views on domestic issues, but as a citizen, I would hope the President would emulate all of his predecessors for many decades and release his tax returns. I would also hope that there be a full investigation of Russia's interference in our election. It seems to me there should be a bipartisan commission to do that now because of the breakdown of trust, apparently, in the House Intelligence Committee. The last thing I'd like to say is that the most disturbing part of the budget to me as a former career official is the explicit lack of faith in government. And I'll be the first to say that government is not perfect. We do have to pay attention to reform. But trying to deconstruct the government and hollow it out, it belies the truth that government can do an enormous amount of good in the world. And look at all of our great secretaries of states and presidents, Republicans and Democrats, who built the liberal world order. They didn't fail, and we're not failing as a country. I think that's the most disturbing part of this. at that. This is a slap in the face to our diplomats, this 30% cut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've exhausted